We anxiously waited hours in front of the local bookstore for the midnight opening, which doesn't sound as excruciatingly long as it actually was when I was 13. But I was determined to stay there all night if needed, armed with my group of 8th grade friends, and braced myself for the crowd mentality once those doors swung open. It was the pinnacle moment of my life at the time, sad, but so damn exciting. 7th grade is pretty rough in general, plus I was an only child, literally prepared to go through it alone. I made a few friends, but it was really the next year in 8th grade that I found a group of other misfits who had come to accept me. Maggie and I had advanced math together with Mr. Bueller, and in between study breaks, we'd come to know a few other girls who also enjoyed reading and wanted to hang out. The group of about 7 girls that Maggie and I gravitated towards all had different backgrounds and interests, but we shared one common obsession: Harry Potter. While most of our classmates were studying hard and preparing for high school, we were busy scouring the internet for the latest Potter news. It was the first of what would become a long history of nerdy sci-fi fantasy fandoms. That night, waiting outside the bookstore was for the release of the 4th book, Goblet of Fire. For anyone who lived under a rock, this is about the time the HP hype exploded worldwide. The tiny San Marino bookstore had anticipated so many fans to see the release of the 4th book that they actually arranged a midnight release. Our friends conspired among parents who were willing to drive us, chaperone us, and of course feed us while we were anxiously waiting for 8 hours. But even among ourselves, the throes of geekdom weren't all butterbeer and chocolate frogs. We turned on each other for some friendly competition. I thought I had a leg up on fandom and was the #1 true fan when I took it upon myself to write a letter to J.K. Rowling. For those of you too accustomed to the internet, this involved an actual pen, paper, and photos of me reading the fantasy novels. I'd carefully gotten a hold of her publishing company's address in New York that I'd been told only forwards a few select letters to the famed author. A few weeks after I mailed that passionately written letter, I got a huge surprise. When my mom picked me up from school one day, she passed a thick 8.5 by 11 envelope. Her smile and excitement was a tip-off that I would cherish this for a long time. My heart swelled when I saw the Bloomsbury Publishing return address. With shaky hands and a huge smile, I delicately pried open the precious package. In it, Rowling had written a reply letter on a thick piece of parchment paper, saying how complimented she was that I wanted to ask her about the 4th book, and of course, an autographed headshot. Okay, it was a form letter, but I still felt that it was a personalized letter for yours truly, the biggest fan in the land. That was better than Christmas, better than my birthday, and almost made me feel better about moving to a new school. With this letter in tow, I thought I was pretty cool. My best friend Maggie had a one-up on me, though. Rowling had visited the same bookstore only a couple years earlier, much earlier than when the popularity exploded, and not only got an autographed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but got to meet her as well. Geez, there's no way I'd top that. The line was wrapped around the bookstore, continued down the street, and into the parking lot. Almost everyone was decked out in full costume, with black robes, capes, and the requisite Harry Potter glasses, lightning bolt scar, and their chosen Hogwarts house color scarf. Why didn't we think to dress full out? Yeah, we had the lightning bolt scars drawn on our forehead in the dead center because this was pre-movie debauchery. But we really didn't think dressing up was a thing. Let it go, I told myself. We were still the best of the best. A local news crew had arrived and was asking people a few questions about their love of Harry Potter. Eventually, the news reporter had a few dedicated fans gathered round asking how many times people had read all 3 books. Throughout the group, I heard 7, followed by an 8 times, and lastly, a 9. Perhaps it was because I was a smartass, but I decided to follow it with a 10 as loudly as I could. I looked around and no one had topped it. Seriously, I totally made that up. Really, I had only read the books 3 times each. But that is how I ended up with a 5-minute interview on the local news about my obsession with Harry Potter. I knew that no matter what else happened that night, that I had topped the ultimate fandom, even if it was a little lie. At midnight, they did a big, loud countdown, New Year's Eve style, and threw the doors open for the chaos. The crowd cheered, kids jumping for joy, and my friends raised their arms like victory was truly ours. We were proud to walk up to the stack of books, piled to the ceiling like a literary treasure chest, and I could lay my hands on my very own copy. We high-fived each other, smiled, and cracked open the fresh pages to get a few chapters in before having to begrudgingly hand it over to the sales clerk to be scanned. I purchased my book and was white-knuckling it, holding it so tightly on the way home. Each book in the Harry Potter series got increasingly thicker, and I reveled in having more and more to devour. I barely slept that night trying to finish it. My fandom didn't stop there, though. I launched a website on the Angel Fire platform using my dad's work computer, wrote fan fiction with Harry and Cho Chang getting past second base, played video games, and read books based on the psychology of the HP series. Our friends were the only people I could confide in about these activities, probably because they were just as nerdy. We waited in line for every single midnight book release and every single midnight movie opening. Later, we did dress up in characters. I was always in the Slytherin house. The times we enjoyed in those lines were great. We played cards, quizzed each other, and later in high school and college, were able to catch up on the latest boy gossip and life happenings. Eventually, those things became more important, and exciting adult happenings replaced the void that Harry Potter once filled. Our get-togethers in college encompassed stressful classes, relationships, and growing pains that were anything but magical. The culmination of my Harry Potter experience came during college. Studying abroad, I had a few star sightings, a few fleeting moments of life in Hogwarts before my eyes. I was at a cafe in Paris when I saw Alan Rickman, who played Professor Snape, stroll down the street. In slow motion, his footsteps on the cobblestone mimicked my beating heart. I was jumping for joy inside, but I knew I would have looked entirely crazy had I tried to approach him. In London, I did all the requisite Potterhead stops, and I begged my friends to see Harry himself, Daniel Radcliffe, perform in the Equus play. Harry Potter, naked, on stage. So many squeals. But social nicety has probably prevented me from public humiliation. Good call. Nothing, however, could stop me from pulling out my internationally roaming cell phone and dial Maggie's number. She barely answered when I spouted off the exciting news, saying, "Maggie, OMG, you will never believe who I just saw, Daniel Radcliffe. Remember when we used to joke that if we'd ever see him in real life, we would jump on him and attack him? Well, I didn't exactly do that, but it was really cool to see him running around on stage." "Oh, it's 5 a.m. your time and you have an interview in the morning? Sorry to wake you up, but love you, and we'll talk soon when you're actually awake." I think they always loved those phone calls. But reality set in. We were not attending Hogwarts, and we were adults who needed sleep for job interviews. Especially the last few years of college, each friend spoke less and less about the books. Our lives got inevitably more complicated, and it became less necessary to find a place for Harry Potter in them. Thinking about it now, I believe we attached ourselves to the story because it's about a few friends who weren't perfect, went through some serious situations, and made it through. I will admit, though, that there were a few tears shed at the last book because I thought it marked the end of my childhood. But rather than an ending, it connected me to a good group of high school friends that I am so proud to say we are still as close today, long after the friends in Harry Potter took their last Hogwarts Express ride into the distance.
That was VAMP first-timer Angela Venuti.